At dawn, the English forces entered York through a breach in the city walls. They thought their plan was flawless, but Ivar had anticipated their move. He knew about the wall's vulnerability and left it unpatched deliberately to lure the enemy into a trap. Now, Ethelwulf, thinking he had victory in his grasp, even brought his two precious sons to the battlefield. The troops were quickly assembled, with Ethelwulf and Haemund leading separate detachments toward the inner city, but as the soldiers advanced into the alleys, thick smoke obscured their vision. Hesitating in the smog, they were suddenly struck by a volley of arrows. Guessing the enemy's numbers to be few, Ethelwulf immediately pursued, only for the Vikings to block the alley's entrance with barriers. It was then the English realized the enemy was well prepared. As archers from the second floor began their relentless assault, Ethelwulf knew that they had been tricked and told everyone to get out of the area, but they didn't notice the spiked traps that had been set up at the exit, and a few of the soldiers who had been in the lead were pierced through, with arrows raining down and traps at their feet. They were caught in a deadly snare, so they switched to the next exit, but all the intersections can be set up traps. Dense spikes through the body of the generals. The screams were endless. With no other choice, Ethelwulf had to step on the bodies of his own soldiers trapped in the spikes to make their escape. These soldiers, who might not have died otherwise, were trampled to death by their comrades, a brutal reality of war. The English, like headless flies, scrambled within the city, while Ivar quietly admired his handiwork from the bell tower. Haemund faced a similar fate, only to encounter fireworks as an additional peril. Seeing the enemy in disarray, Fitzurk led a charge, and a melee ensued. As a son of Ragnar, Fitzurk was no less brave than the rest, but he was more reserved and less decisive. After all, he does not have the experience of Bjorn, nor the strength of Ubb, nor the wisdom of Ivar, but Fitzurk is the one who cherishes the Brotherhood the most.
Come on and fight, you coward!
Ethelwulf's provocation was successful. Emotions, Ivar's greatest weakness, got the better of him, and unable to withstand the insults, he rushed to the main battlefield. But midway, a soldier struck Ivar off his chariot with a thick stick, marking Ivar's first fall in battle. When the soldier was about to kill Ivar, Ivar quickly got up and killed him back. The furious Ivar slashed 13 times. Blood splattered all over his face. As Ivar returned to his chariot, a group of English soldiers arrived, suspecting this bloodied crawler might be the devil incarnate. Miraculously, their arrows missed Ivar. Ivar also saw the enemy's fear and played a psychological game.
Betrayal förloren! Ikke meg med det bollen! Ikke meg med det bollen! Hvor kan du ikke drive meg? Ikke meg med det bollen!
Ivar not only shocked the enemy, but also Ubb, who didn't even try to save Ivar first. Perhaps deep down, Ubb harbored a fleeting wish for Ivar's death. Given his fearsome presence, after much deliberation, Ubb chose to charge. Prince Ethelred, inheriting his father's valor, but he was soon pierced in the shoulder by a cold arrow. The warrior bishop, Haemund, displayed unmatched bravery, wielding his sword to decimate numerous foes. His sacred blade cut through iron as if it were butter, easily warding off enemy attacks. Vikings have always admired the strong, so Ivar admired Haemund too, but no matter how strong Haemund was, it didn't matter. Ethelwulf was already retreating with Ethelred, who had been hit by an arrow. They had a poor start, marking Ethelwulf's second defeat to Ivar. The victorious Vikings did not celebrate grandly, as they too had suffered many casualties. Ubb and Ivar disagreed on their next move. Ubb felt that he could use the victory to negotiate terms. He still wanted to claim East Anglia. Ivar, on the other hand, had no intention of negotiating, as he felt it was not the Vikings' style to offer peace. Under the cover of night, Ubb secretly woke Fitzurk to negotiate with Ethelwulf without Ivar knowing. After stating their purpose, Ethelwulf allowed them to rest in the camp for a night before giving a response. However, Hemond ambushed their tent, killing Ub and Hvitserk's attendants and then brutally beating Ub. Luckily, Hemond left Ub and Hvitserk alive, as they had come to negotiate. Ub and Hvitserk's plight was scorned by Ivar, who thought they lacked intelligence. Ivar believed that the joint rule of the three brothers was doomed to fail. He seized this opportunity to win over the hearts of the people and consolidate power all to himself. As the elder brother, Ub refused to be led by Ivar, deciding to return to Kattegat with Hvitserk. Before setting sail, the indecisive Hvitserk changed his mind, choosing to continue fighting alongside Ivar. The moment Hvitserk jumped from the ship, Ub's heart shattered. Realizing he was the one abandoned, Hvitserk could not foresee how this choice would lead to profound regret.
You see, everyone is with me.
Bjorn arrived at the entrance to the Mediterranean once again, this time accompanied by the wanderer Sinrik. Sinrik informed Bjorn that his map was an old version and that the Roman Empire had undergone significant changes, suggesting a visit to Sicily instead. The ruler of Sicily was Euphemius, a former Byzantine commander who had attempted to overthrow the Roman authority and fled to Sicily after his failure. Although Euphemius was a fugitive, he still possessed considerable power, so they decided to disguise themselves as merchants to enter the city without causing any disputes. They soon met Euphemius. However, upon hearing Bjorn was a merchant, Euphemius immediately drew his weapon, but Bjorn quickly subdued him. Euphemius then burst into laughter, revealing he was testing the Vikings' abilities since he needed guards rather than merchants, given the many who sought to capture him. Impressed by Bjorn's prowess, Euphemius offered to hire him as his bodyguard for a hefty sum. Without hesitation, Bjorn accepted. As his goal was adventure, Euphemius then embraced Bjorn, and the matter was settled simply as that. At the banquet, there was a woman named Kasia, a Christian nun taken from Byzantium by Euphemius. Kasia was famous in Byzantium, and the emperor had sentenced Euphemius to death for kidnapping. It seemed Euphemius was not exactly a noble character. The next day, Sinrik revealed that the real ruler was not Euphemius but an Arab chief named Ziyadat. Ziyadat controlled several cities in the Mediterranean, making Euphemius just one of his many agents, and Euphemius had to pay tribute to Ziyadat annually. After hearing Sinrik's explanation, Bjorn became interested in this chief, and they requested Euphemius to take them to see Ziyadat. Originally Euphemius was reluctant, but under the threat of Kasia, Euphemius decided to take them to meet Chief Ziyadat. A nun with such a deterrent power made Bjorn realize Kasia was no ordinary woman. Soon, they arrived in Tunis, and after traveling through the Sahara Desert for a day and a night, they finally met Ziyadat. Ziyadat showed great hospitality. He had heard of Bjorn's experiences and he had dealt with Vikings from Kypros on many occasions, so Ziyadat spoke Viking as well. Ziyadat treated Bjorn and Halfdan generously, arranging for them to be entertained by exotic beauties. That night was busy for everyone. It turned out Kasia and Ziyadat were old lovers, which explained her influence. Bjorn also forgot his duty as an escort and spent the night flirting with a beautiful woman. Interestingly, Halfdan found out that his companion was actually a man upon touching. The next day, unrest broke out outside, with Ziyadat executing Euphemius's man, giving Bjorn a bad feeling. Indeed, Euphemius's body had been taken to the kitchen, where chefs debated which part of him would be tastier. Ziyadat killed Euphemius because he found out that Euphemius was planning to betray him, and because Kasia had said a lot of bad things about Euphemius. Ziyadat then casually hosted a banquet for Bjorn to celebrate their trade relations. Nordic furs, birds of prey, weapons, and slaves were highly popular in many regions. Discovering the delicious food was Euphemius, Bjorn and his companions lost their appetite, and their situation as Euphemius's nominal guards became perilous. Sure enough, influenced by something Kasia said, Ziyadat decided to arrest and execute Bjorn and his party on the spot. Sinrik spotted an impending sandstorm, suggesting they could escape in the chaos if they delayed their execution until the storm hit. Others noticed the sandstorm too, so Kasia wanted to execute them quickly before it arrived. Thanks to the storm, Bjorn and his party survived their African adventure. However, during their journey, they witnessed vast deserts, experienced male prostitutes, and even consumed human flesh. These strange and extraordinary events will surely add vivid and dramatic strokes to their tales of adventure. Outside the city of York, Ethelwulf and Haemund shared their perspectives. Ethelwulf, who had lost many battles, thought they should retreat to Wessex and regroup. However, Haemund claimed he had seen victory, with God showing him visions of the enemy's corpses strewn across the land. Engulfed in flames, Haemund's strategy was to besiege without attacking, blocking all passages to ensure the enemy could not access food. Once the enemy was completely cut off from supplies, York would inevitably fall without a fight. Following this, the English forces ambushed the Vikings' hunting parties daily, indicating the Vikings inside the city were indeed suffering from starvation. Fitzurk inquired about how to deal with the impending famine crisis. Ivar, however, appeared impatient.
Today we just grow weaker.
What are you really saying? Huh, brother? That I was wrong not to negotiate with the Saxons and that Uber was right.
Uber was wrong. That's why I didn't sail with him.
But now you regret it?
I just told you no. I am no one's dog. Ivar.
Facing his brother's heartfelt concerns, Ivar responded in such a manner. Meanwhile, Judith's cousin Mammal had arrived from Mercia to support their efforts to eliminate these pagans and avenge King El. A few days later, plumes of green smoke began emerging from within York. Haemund believed this to be God's work, thinking the enemy had started to burn their dead due to starvation. Given these signs, Ethelwulf planned to launch an immediate full-scale attack. Yet, Haemund once again directly opposed Ethelwulf's plan, suggesting they wait for his vision to fully materialize before attacking.
Oh, we can't always be guided by your visions, Bishop Hagen.
But surely you see the signs for yourself.
Oh, I also see other signs. How you put yourself forward, above me, to take command. Even though I am your king! I'm not God!
Forgive me, sire. King of Kings. I am your humble servant.
Ethelwulf finally erupted in anger, but he still heeded Haemund's counsel, unaware this would be Haemund's last advice to him. Days later, English scouts reported that the Vikings had abandoned the city, their siege strategy seemingly successful. After confirming that the city was empty, they picked up the fleeing townspeople. But what was puzzling was the sudden appearance of many rats on the ground. It turned out the Vikings had not retreated at all. Ivar had led his army to hide in the sewers, and the smoke was a deliberate ploy. Realizing the enemy was besieging them to starve them out, Ivar devised a counterplan to make them believe they were burning bodies, leaving an empty city for the enemy. Watching the unsuspecting English on the ground, Fitzurk finally understood the plan. As manhole covers opened, a flood of Vikings emerged from underground, stunning the celebrating English. They could never have imagined an enemy hiding in the sewers, and many soldiers lost their lives before they could react. The streets were thrown into chaos. Ivar's equipment had been upgraded. Now, he could fight upright and had acquired a set of long-range weapons. At this moment, the English forces were thrown into disarray again. As the main fighting force of England, Haemund was on horseback, cutting down the enemy. A furious Ethelwulf, blinded by rage, picked up stones and furiously smashed the enemy's heads. On another front, the physically frail Alfred faced his first real test as a warrior, confronting a berserk warrior wielding a giant hammer. Fortunately, Mammal arrived in time, and together, they managed to take down the frenzied warrior. Learning from his previous experience, Ivar did not go into battle himself. Instead, he was accompanied by 2 bodyguards.
Spurs!
As the saying goes, shoot the horse to get the rider. Haemund was thrown heavily to the ground, crushed under his horse and spitting blood.
Hættu að bæjast! Greif du horn hesten min! Mitt till Capios, han skulle svara som gåskan kan, Maria Bayas.
It seemed Ivar truly admired Hemund. Instead of seizing the chance to kill him, Ivar gave Hemund an opportunity to turn the tables. Faced with such an unfavorable situation, Manel urged Ethelwulf to retreat quickly, but Ethelwulf, too ashamed to retreat again, preferred to die at York. Then, under Manel's cover, Ethelwulf retreated once again, marking his third defeat. It's evident that Manel was a formidable fighter. After killing 3 men in succession, he was able to exchange blows with Hvitserk. However, in the end, he was struck in the back of the head by a Viking warrior wielding a giant hammer. Although Ivar gave Hemund a chance, the outnumbered warrior was still captured. Ivar did not kill Hemund, hoping to persuade this great warrior to join them. A few days later, the English finally abandoned their camp and retreated. Ivar considered whether to pursue them in victory. However, Hvitserk suggested they first take back Kattegat, given their lack of a stronghold and Bjorn's absence from Lagertha's side, making it the perfect opportunity to attack Kattegat. Ivar agreed with Hvitserk's viewpoint this time but wanted to find an ally first. Who Ivar is seeking as an ally will be revealed in the next episode.